Well, I was born down in the Southland 20-some odd years ago.
Which is good. Wow, 7 already? 7? Welcome back to Simply Done Cuisine. Spring is in the air and I have a dish that will hit that nail on the head. Fettuccine pasta with cremini mushrooms and roasted leeks, also topped with roasted apples and butternut squash. We are then going to take the butternut squash and apples, roll it inside of a puff pastry sheet with some mascarpone cheese. Boy, that's going to be your breakfast tomorrow and it's going to be good. I can't wait. Like always on Simply Done Cuisine, we're going to be making 2 different things. So that means we want to start the things that take the longest first. I'm going to put a pot of water on the stove, about a gallon of water with a 1/4 cup of salt. Make it taste about like seawater. I'm also going to pull out that puff pastry sheet and let it thaw. You can do that preferably up to 2 hours in advance. That way it's nice and pliable when you need to work with it. When you take your puff pastry out to thaw, make sure you keep it covered so it doesn't get a nasty film on it. Let's start with the butternut squash. I'll show you a quick trick to make that thing nice and easy. First thing we need to do is cut the ends off of the butternut squash. Now that the ends are off, let's give it a quick peel. Yes, I'm using just a regular vegetable peeler. It might take a couple of passes, but it'll come off just fine. Don't forget, stick all this in your compost bin. It's going to make the garden beautiful. You want to slice it right down the middle and then scoop the seeds out with a spoon. If you want, you can keep those seeds. Give them a wash in a colander, toast them up just like pumpkin seeds and hit them with a little chipotle powder and salt. It's the best bar snack ever. To cut my butternut squash, I'm going to cut the bulb ends off and then I'm going to cut it into thin planks, make it easier to cube. Pull about, I don't know, a dozen sage leaves from the stem, mince them up real fine. We're looking for about a tablespoon. I'm going to peel, core, and medium dice my apples. You might have one of these. I have one of these. Actually, I have both. Duh. That's a nice apple cutter. This is just an apple core. If this is all you have, no big deal. Throw it through there like a ninja star, hack it up with your knife, you'll be good to go. Who cares? It's just apples. I'm going to make sure I store them in water with a little bit of lemon juice. That'll keep them from turning brown. The apples and butternut squash are diced and ready to go. Time to preheat my oven for my mushrooms and leeks and my skillet for my butternut squash and apples. While these things get hot, I'm going to go ahead and quarter my mushrooms and slice my leeks. I rinsed my cremini mushrooms and now I'm going to quarter them so they're nice and hearty in the dish. When we slice these, keep it nice and thin. We're going to start by taking the head off and then nice thin cuts. We're going to separate them with our fingers, run them under some cold running water to rinse off any grit that may be there. Then we're just going to let them air dry. Remember, thin slices are key to keeping these leeks tender. The water has come to a boil and my iron skillet's hot. I'm going to add my butternut squash with a little bit of oil and then I'm going to chop my garlic and parsley, finishing the ingredients for this recipe. My water is at a rolling boil. Time to throw in the pasta. We're also going to start the mushrooms and leeks. Into a large mixing bowl, combine the quartered cremini mushrooms, the leeks, garlic, and 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Make sure you give the mushrooms and leeks a good stir. You want that garlic flavor all over the place. Sort of like invaders from Mars. Get the coffee maker ready. We're in for a ride. 8 shots of espresso will do. What? Place that onto a pan with non-stick spray and pop it in the oven at 400 degrees. Butternut squash is caramelized and beginning to brown. I'm going to sprinkle in my sage and give it a stir. Yummy! It smells fantastic in here. We're going to let that cook for about 3 minutes. Hit it with the orange juice, ½ a cup. We're going to increase the heat, let it reduce by half, then add our apples just to get them warm. The pasta's in, getting ready to add the apples to my butternut squash. Time to pop these mushroom and leeks in the oven. Make sure the apples are well drained before you add them to your butternut squash. Give it a nice stir and let them get warm. Then we're going to hold it warm to go on top of the pasta. While the apple's warm and the rest of this finishes, let's get our mascarpone cheese ready and roll out the puff pastry. It's divided. Half to go in the stuffing, the other half we will add honey to go on top. Yum!
It's from the bees!
Yeah, about a tablespoon and a half. It's going to be nice and sweet. Just give the cheese and the honey a good stir to make sure it's combined. For your puff pastry, lay it on a piece of wax paper and roll it out with a rolling pin. Make sure that rolling pin has a light coat of flour on it or the puff pastry is going to stick. Make sure you roll the puff pastry out to about half its original thickness. After you are finished rolling out your puff pastry, simply leave it covered at room temperature and we'll fill it with the stuffing later. My pasta is finished al dente. Time to give it a drain and hit it with a little bit of olive oil. Right when the pasta comes out of the water is the key time to hit it with olive oil and salt and pepper. Watch out! Ooh! Make sure you give it a good toss to make sure that olive oil and salt and pepper get thoroughly mixed in. One of my favorite things to do with these large pasta dishes is serve it in a gigantic bowl, serve it up family style, and let everybody just dig in. So the way we're going to do that, put the pasta down first, top it with the hot butternut squash and apples. As you can see, the leeks are caramelized and the mushrooms are done. We're going to put this right on top of the apples and butternut squash. We'll splash it with a little bit of olive oil, hit it with the lemon juice, and blast it with fresh parsley. This thing's going to be freaking amazing. You're going to love it. To my remaining butternut squash and apples, I'm going to add my orange juice, brown sugar, and mascarpone cheese. Then I'll add my vanilla and my cinnamon and give it a quick stir. Once that cooks together, I'm going to stir in 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and my 3/4 of a cup of chopped walnuts. I'm going to completely cool that before I roll it up into my puff pastry. I like to cool my stuffings by spreading them out on a plate and popping them in the refrigerator. For the apple and butternut squash roulade, I'm simply going to place the filling on the bottom third of the puff pastry. I'm going to tuck in my corners and then roll it up like a burrito, making sure that my seam is on the bottom. Remember, the roulade goes on a pan with non-stick spray and the seam side goes down. Just before the roulade goes in the oven, baste it with egg wash, which is just a cracked egg whisked up.
Today is the day!
Now if you're going to bake it right away, go ahead and brush it with the egg wash and stick it in the freezer for 20 minutes. Then pop it in a 375-degree oven for about 25 minutes. We've made this humongous family-style pasta, fettuccine, butternut squash, apples, leeks, mushrooms, everything in the world that's delicious. Don't forget, you have your roulade that's already made. If you want to put your roulade in the freezer, wrap it in plastic and foil and make sure it stays nice and sealed. When the apple butternut roulade comes out of the oven, first thing you want to do is let it cool for about 10 minutes. That way all the goodness doesn't ooze out of the middle. But then you can slice it and put it on a platter and spoon that honey mascarpone cheese over the top. Serve it up, delish. Thank you for joining me again on Simply Done Cuisine. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of fantastic fettuccine and apple and butternut squash roulade. See you next week.
Well, good morning, Captain. Good morning to you, shine. Well, do you need a new mule skinner? Out on your new mud line.